Deloitte's AI Forum 2025 India. In real time, transforming with AI.
Thank you, Mr. Kant. And, I think he's obviously known for many things. And, we spoke about Incredible India when I first remember, because that was one of the really marquee campaigns. And, of course, Make in India, Startup India, and Niti Aayog as well. But one thing, ladies and gentlemen, is obviously, he's known as a transformation man. But the energy, the passion, I think that is something that is very contagious. And when you have an energy and passion to do things, that's the only time when you can transform. And I think this subject is a subject, honestly, where India can take its rightful place in the world. So, Mr. Kant, you spoke about, obviously, in terms of India taking AI leadership, but maybe there are a bunch of people here from the private sector, from academia, some from the government as well. If you had to say, what are the few things that we as a country need to do from covering all these aspects to actually get to that AI supremacy? Because you spoke about frugal innovation, but what else, what advice would you give to all of us? Because everybody is looking here, everybody is doing small things, but is it time now to really take the next leap?
So, I've been a long-term believer that in AI, it's got to be a very lethal combination of both the hardware element as well as your ability to write great algorithms and the power of software together and optimizing that power in a very big way, in a clever manner, because we must understand that AI is very energy consuming as well. You will have, by 2026, you will have all these queries that you raise on all the AI platforms. The amount of energy it will be consuming will be more than the energy which Japan consumes today. I mean, that's the latest study. So you need less energy consuming, you need more optimization, you need the right mix between hardware and software, and therefore you need to ensure that your engineers are able to build up absolutely the right mix to be able to optimize. But this can't be done without hardware. And therefore, my belief is that you can't say that I'm going to be just a consumer of open source technology. You have to find solutions to your problems. What are your problems of India? Your problems are that your learning outcomes are very poor, your health outcomes need to improve, your nutritional standards have to improve. You have to track every single woman from a point of pregnancy to the point of delivery, because you have great amount of stunting and wasting in children. So you need to solve your problems. It's not just about doing a new large language model every year. You need sectoral interventions in all these cutting edge areas of your growth. So when you find a solution to these challenges of India, you are not finding an AI solution for Indian problems of the 1.4 billion people of India, but you are actually finding a solution for the next 5 billion people of the world who will be moving from poverty to middle class. So you will be finding a solution for the global south, and your market is the next 5 billion people of the world. And that cannot be done without a population scale impact at low cost. And that, to my mind, is the challenge. India's ability to do population scale impact at very low cost. And that would require great amount of clever engineering.
So, Mr. Kant, again, I mean, India has obviously been, and the software, we've always been great. You spoke about hardware. So how do we really get this? Is this the government that's going to provide the computer infrastructure? Is it private institutions that will need to set up? I mean, how do we get the compute infrastructure? Because like you rightly said, it can't just be a software play.
Yeah. So the challenge is that today you're working around NVIDIA's A100 and H100s, which is the most advanced. Now, the half the computing power of that is in H800s, with which DeepSeek has worked. But in the long run, you need chips, and you need to be a manufacturer of chips. And that's why you have a semiconductor mission which has put out 76,000 crores in India so that chips could be manufactured, and you have Tata's getting into a collaboration with TMSC for a manufacturing plant in Dholera. You have Micron doing, chip designing here, a number of people. But in the long run, you have to do chip manufacturing. Without cutting-edge chip manufacturing, it will not be possible, because the world, as you read, if those of you who've read, and I would advocate that all of you must read this new book. Well, it's quite some time now, but you should all read this Chris Miller's book, The Chip Wars, which really demonstrates that from mobiles to telephone to defense to automobiles, everything will be it'll be a question of chips. So you have to have strategic autonomy, because what the last Biden order demonstrates is that they are fighting America is fighting geopolitical wars on the basis of technology. You are saying that I'm going to cut out half the world without technology. Even with Quad partners like India, they are saying that we'll give you access to only 15,000 GPUs. So you are fighting technological warfares of the future, all on geopolitical warfares, all on the basis of technology.
It's an interesting one, going back to the first answer as well, and which Mr. Kant said about our own Deloitte studies say that pretty much most people look at emission always from fossil fuels and others, but Gen AI and others are now going to cause 14% emissions are going to come from Gen AI. So I think that is equally so in terms of optimum usage of resources. And also happy, Mr. Kant, to tell you that the India Semiconductor Mission, for example, all the 76,000 crores, Deloitte is involved in looking at how the money is being spent. Now, an important one is, obviously, we have the talent pool, and you spoke about the number of AI engineers, but to take it to the next level, right, in terms of skilling of talent, what all is it from the grassroots, the school levels, because this is, of course, here and now, but is also going to be long term as well, and with not just AI, but quantum and others also coming. So anything on your thoughts in terms of talent? How do we build the talent of the future?
So three things to my mind. First and foremost, I think a lot of curricula in our engineering institutions, and we have a large number of engineering institutions. In all our engineering institutions, including IIT, triple IITs, NITs, need to be restructured for the world of tomorrow. Many of these new institutions have introduced courses on AI, quantum computing, etc. But a whole, since AI it's a foundational technology, it cuts across sectors, and therefore every single engineer getting in needs to be taught that at the triple IIT level itself. The second thing is that those who are, this kind of a huge revolution cannot happen from the government. The government can be a catalyst. The government has shown its intent by driving the AI mission. It's the private sector which has to drive this. The innovation has to come from the private sector. The commitment for AI has to be big. They have to realize that Indian private sector has to leapfrog, and therefore much of this sectoral intervention in terms of AI and the use of AI to leapfrog across sectors will have to happen from the private sector. And the third, to my mind, is that a huge amount of R&D needs to be put in, which needs to, Indian private sector is very shy of R&D. Our expend on R&D is very, very minimal. It's just about 0.6% of our GDP. The government is coming out with this 1 lakh crore scheme to put more resources into R&D, but it requires a massive 10x amount of investment from the private sector so as to enable India to really leapfrog in many of these areas. So our number of patents has increased enormously, but the patents getting commercialized has to be much greater.
Maybe just to expand on that bit of R&D, because R&D across every area we're quite weak, or we haven't actually invested. I mean, what is stopping us? I mean, what's your perspective, and why are we not investing in that? Because that is the value curve. That's the real value that we can actually move up with great R&D.
So You know, India has actually grown on the back of services. India has not grown on the back of manufacturing. But you need to grow manufacturing to 25% of your GDP to create good quality jobs. You can't grow at 9 to 10% and be a $30 trillion economy on the back of agriculture. You know, you can't grow with, you can't have 45% of your population dependent on agriculture. No country in the world has done that. You need to take people out of agriculture to give them better quality jobs in manufacturing. Manufacturing requires R&D. And for manufacturing to go to 25% in cutting edge areas of growth, you look at solar, you look at wind, you look at battery storage, you look at electric mobility. All this requires huge amount of R&D because every day new disruption is taking place. New technologies are coming in many of these areas. And therefore, R&D is very critical. And I think many of these, the good thing that's happening is that several of our companies, I mean, if you look at Tata's or Mahindra's, they're coming out with new vehicles, top-class new products. And therefore, what I see now is a huge commitment for better technology, better products, cutting-edge works, all of them, and they have a great integration of IoT with their new products.
You know, you've been a big proponent of the Startup India ecosystem, right? And I think today India can be proud of the number of unicorns that have been created, and that is something that is truly world-class. I mean, some of the engineering marvel also that we have in some of these startups, they are competing with the really the big tech ones as well. How do you see that ecosystem of startups and others sort of really sort of propelling India and working with a number of corporates, not just what they do, but how does everybody build an ecosystem? Because today you can't have all the skills in one place. So how do you see that startup ecosystem, especially in terms of AI, but even other things?
So, you know, one of the main reasons why I feel very optimistic about India taking the lead in AI in a big way is one, merely the availability of vast amount of data and data sets. And I really strongly feel that the new AI data bank should put out a lot of more data in public domain. The government should actually be forced to put out data sets in an anonymized manner so that our startups and researchers can all work around it. But you know, when we started the startup movement in 2016, we just had 300 startups in India. Today we have 155,000 startups in India. We have 140 unicorns. So look at the extent of disruption these people have done. You know, the UPI was created by the government, but they use the model of digital identity to drive this. I mean, you have to give a lot of credit to these people to drive not merely fast payment, they drove credit, they drove insurance, they drove stock markets, all 30 seconds to 1 minute. Nowhere else in the world does this happen. And therefore, India has demonstrated its great ability to do frugal engineering. And that is what encourages me to say that India can be a great champion of AI in the future. And I have just no doubts that the vast amount of data sets, the huge amount of talent pool of 420,000 engineers, which doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, will be able to utilize this to propel India to becoming an AI champion of the future, and in a frugal engineering manner.
Yeah. It's a very interesting thing, and of course, I had the privilege of working with Mr. Kant when he was at Niti Aayog and COVID, and post that, you know, one of the things he led was also the aspirational districts, the 108 aspirational districts as well in India. So we did a study on, you know, we were trying anemia, for example. Because of anemia, India loses about $45 billion, and, you know, Niti has carried out a study in terms of that. And in a particular village close to Gurgaon, so there's obviously the city of, you know, sort of the modern Gurgaon, but you also have the villages in Gurgaon, and there most women were anemic, and the government was of course giving them the iron, you know, and everything else, all the supplements, but the issue was nothing was happening. I mean, their anemic level was not going, you know, the hemoglobin level was not going up. And because of the data sets, so we looked at the blood reports, and because of through the blood reports, we realized that there is a worming problem. So normally when you go to a doctor, they don't really prescribe deworming for anemia, right? I mean, it's more hemoglobin and iron, more iron supplements and others. So just through the data set, that was actually identified, and in your, you know, you don't come to from severe to, you know, reasonable levels in about 6 to 8 weeks, you don't come because it takes a lot of time, even iron supplements take. But in 6 to 8 weeks, people came into closer to the normal levels. So similarly, it's an interesting, in Rajasthan, there was a financial services company which looked at, while giving credit, when they gave credit to women, even at 1% lower rate of interest, the delinquency ratio was far lower, so it was more profitable to give to women than to men. But what they did, they insisted that if, of course, a man is taking the loan, they insisted that the woman also has to be there and she has to also sign, because the different analytics proved that women have a little bit more pride, or not a little bit, a lot more pride, that they have to return back the loan compared to the men. I mean, these are small examples of, but credit to that set of people that, who don't have collaterals, who don't have other things, can really propel India. And so this data sets that, Mr. Kant is speaking about is phenomenal. And India has just, it's not just, one homogeneous kind of a thing. It's really diverse. It's more diverse than Europe, probably in terms of just the ethnicities that we have, the languages that we speak. Coming back to, in terms of, you spoke about open source systems. Why is that important for India?
Yeah. So just to get back to what you were saying, because I worked on this 115 of the most backward districts of India, and they are all far-flung districts of India, and the Prime Minister asked me to work on them, and the challenge was that in all these districts, we didn't call them the backward districts of India, we called them the aspirational districts of India. And we said that we want to achieve this outcome. We defined the outcomes first. And we started working on data, and we started working on good governance. Now, this tracking of data was never being done before as to what you have achieved during the course of the month in terms of health outcomes, learning outcomes, nutritional standards. And if you are able to track data and put the ranking of these districts in public domain and tell the collector, tell the MLA, tell the MP that your district is moving or not moving forward, or is it going backward, and you create a huge sense of competition and you name and shame them, then the difference starts happening. In 3 years' time, these 115 districts became better than the best performing districts because we were putting data out in public domain. So I'm a great believer in data, I'm a great believer in ranking, and I'm a great believer in good governance. And my belief is that if you add the power of artificial intelligence to this data and enable every single individual to know whether his learning outcome is, this challenge of learning outcomes being very poor in India can never be solved by human teachers. It can never be solved by human teachers. Teachers are missing, teachers are absent, but if you use the power of artificial intelligence to monitor the students in every subject and say whether he's going up or coming down, or whether what more he needs to do in every subject, you will see a radical improvement in learning outcomes in our schools today. And similarly with health, it's the power of AI which must be used to transform India. And what will take you 40 years to transform, you can do it in the next 4 years with the power of AI.
No, I mean, that is so true. We are in our whole recruitment process now at Deloitte. We obviously use a Gen AI-built tool, but what we're also using is we're looking at the tonality of the person speaking as well. So we know the emotions in terms of whether we think that they're saying the right things or wrong things. We're also doing an online authentication to see is it the same person who's supposed to be actually there, and it can also tell you whether you're a fraud. All right, I think very important for all of us, right? Because there are a lot of people who come in and do these things. But it's this learning outcomes, and I think it's a beautiful point that has been brought about, because that earlier it's just a one-way communication of receipt, but now because of the way it can understand whether the student is really, is grasping the concept, this to and fro is what actually AI can actually enable to do, which was not possible earlier. So actually skilling at scale in some senses. So again, one thing in terms of course, the G20, which was hugely successful. I mean, I think most people believed that it could not be pulled out. I mean, this is of course, but one of the interesting things was the DPI infrastructure, which you sort of became a globally recognized term. How do you see that DPI sort of evolving? Because that is something that is built on open source, evolving from an India perspective. How do you see that? And of course, I do think from a global South perspective also that it has a context. So we just wanted to know, with you think AI can also be infused into DPIs?
Yeah. So, I've been a great believer in open source, and it fuels greater level of innovation. It's a great intent of collaborative partnership, and what India has achieved in DPI and what DeepSeek has done in AI is all a result of good open source. But open source is not an end in itself. Open source also means that you have to do end-to-end engineering. You have to do actually quantum technological level jumping by using open source. And you have to do very good, clever engineering on that. And one of the challenges was really about getting the Western world to accept that there is something called the digital public infrastructure, because they're used to proprietary models. They're used to proprietary models by Google, they're used to proprietary model by Meta, they're used to proprietary model by Amazon and Tencent and Alibaba, where all your data is owned by them. Whereas in the digital public infrastructure, there's a digital empowerment protection architecture where you can't memorize the data, you can use that particular transaction, that data, for that only, that particular transaction you can do it, but not memorize data. Now, data is owned by the citizens in DEPA, in the Digital Empowerment Protection Architecture. And to tell the G7 that to create a new definition of digital public infrastructure and to accept the principles of digital public infrastructure and to tell them the transformation that it has happened in India, because the Bank of International Settlement said that what India has achieved in 7 years would have taken India 50 years to achieve. 50 years to achieve. Because COVID time, we put money in the bank account of 800 million people straight without any leakages. Whereas in America, they issued checks, 18% of the checks came back. There were no addresses. But here, there were no leakages. So the transformation power that we could do 2.2 billion COVID vaccination, all which was digital without any paperwork, whereas America, it was all paperwork. I have not used my ATM card, I have not used my credit card, I have not been to a physical bank for 5 years now. I just use my mobile for all my payments. The only time I've used it is when I went to San Francisco to meet my daughter to hire a cab. So India's leapfrogged in many, many ways. And to make them accept that definition was a big challenge. It took us 1 year, but they all accepted that this is the way forward for the global South in the future.
And especially when you look at countries like Africa or you look at others, they really need that. They don't need these, it's an interesting, using the DPI infrastructure, for example, for the state of Goa, we did a particular project where the concept was that, you have building plans that have to be approved, and each building plan has to go to a committee. The committee has a quorum. Right, if the committee members are not there, then it's sort of postponed. If there are, let's assume you identify 5 issues and you correct the issues and put it back, then again you may identify another 2 issues. So so normally this can take just the building plan. This is not the building itself, just the building plan can take between 3 weeks to 3 months. And Goa interestingly has the most complex bylaws, right? Now with DPI and Gen AI, all of the bylaws of Goa have been codified. So that means you just put the building plan, it tells you whether you're in violation or not. If you're in violation, what are you in violation? So you come back, revisit it, put back the plan, and it's approved. 5 minutes. So no people, nobody else, completely transparent, right? So I think that is, I think the interesting thing of how DPI now, of course, is being used in various parts of it. So, of course, with AI and, because it is based on data, it is based on our inherent biases, it is based on maybe some manipulation that can happen. How do we ensure that it is safe, it is trusted, and how do regulators also, because regulators are very important to ensure things happen in a correct manner, but regulators can also ensure that, it can take an enormous amount of time. So how does trust, safety, regulators work for AI? Because that's a very important
So, Donald Trump has just rescinded the executive order relating to regulations on AI just 3 days back. He's abolished that. While AI has a huge potential to increase productivity, huge potential to transform lives of citizens, huge potential to transform education, health, etc., it also has the potential to trigger conflicts among societies. And it has, depending on the algorithms and the assumptions on which it is based. And therefore, it's very important that you have the right ethics, you regulate this in a pro-innovation model. And innovation should never be subverted by regulations. Now, that can never be done by one country alone. This was discussed at G20 at great length. It can't be done by India alone. It would require an international body, like we have a body for nuclear weapons, for instance, which controls all proliferation of nuclear weapons. You will require an international body because one individual company putting constraints, for instance, look at Europe, which has tried to regulate it. It has killed innovation in many ways. So it's important that you don't kill innovation, but you ensure regulation in a pro-developmental, pro-innovation manner, and that would require international regulation, not a national regulation, but an international regulation.
Yeah. Again, interestingly, in terms of biases and trust, as Deloitte, we built something called an unconscious bias tool. So if you take, it's based on a Harvard algorithm, it's based on a Harvard study, and we converted that into an algorithm, and of course, remodeled it a little bit. It could tell you about your biases, not just about gender, but about all kinds of biases, and it's a test that is taken. And we now use that whenever, for example, there is any kind of post-merger integration, for example, to see are there any biases, because culturally you have strong views on each other. It's also used in the performance management system to say, have a blind eye on the name of the person and any other characteristics, and see if that individual should have got a particular feedback or particular rating or whatever. So I think that's the good part of it, trying to remove the biases, but of course based on whatever data that we have. So finally, I think, Mr. Kant, we have one last question from me is, you've been a big Indophile. This 2047, $30 trillion, $20,000 per capita income, do you think we can actually do it?
No, it's doable. It's very much doable. India has had the track record to achieve it. It'll require, to my mind, why it's doable is because we are the only $4 trillion economy growing at about 7.5%, 8% in the world. No other country is doing that. It's doable because we are the only country which is actually making about 8 airports and 3 metros every year. And we are the only country which is doing about 30 kilometers of roads and 12 kilometers of railway lines every day. And we are the only country which has done solar power 31x in the last 8 years. But there are challenges, and there are global challenges. There is a challenge of big power conflict in Europe. There's a challenge of breakdown of global supply chains. There are some domestic challenges of accelerating, greater flow of credit, greater push for exports, etc. But I think the government is quite determined right now, and there's greater predictability and consistency of policies right now. And there is a clear realization that you now have a mission on, yesterday the mission on critical minerals was announced. You have a mission on quantum computing. You have a mission on semiconductor chips. You have a mission on artificial intelligence. And you are driving the move towards a green economy through the green hydrogen mission. So clearly a realization that you need cutting-edge technology to leapfrog to a $30 trillion economy, and artificial intelligence, to my mind, will be the most critical factor across sectors. And there, Indians must demonstrate their great ability to do clever engineering of both software and hardware. You can't do it without hardware, let me tell you. You need foundational innovation in a very big way. It can't be done only on the application layer. It needs great ability to create end-to-end AI products.
Yeah, and I mean to add to Mr. Kant's led Niti Aayog, and Niti has what is called as the frontier tech. So the Prime Minister actually leads something called the frontier tech, which is by 2047 to have technologies that are probably not there today, but for India to identify them ahead of the curve and to ensure that that actually helps. So technology is a significant part of the 2047 vision, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard, I think each one of you would have Mr. Kant's book as well. So please do read it, both for inspiration, for passion, and for, of course, to see how our country can change. But I think it's a fabulous session. So a big round of applause to Mr. Kant. Thank you so much, Mr. Kant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Deloitte's AI Forum 2025 India. In real time, transforming with AI.